have someone very special on stage, and to do that, I'd like to welcome first up the great music journalist Bernie Howitt, because Bernie is going to be interviewing the ASA's very special guest for tonight, the Aussie song and dance man. Of course, I think most of you know the name, Mike McClellan. Please make both welcome.
Welcome, Mike. Now, I'm going to I wrote this out so I don't miss anything. As an introduction, that Mike is a major figure in Australian music. His debut album in 1972, and this is appropriate coming after the Australiana section.
Shit, now you're dating me.
Yeah, but I bought it, so that's how old it is. It contained the first song I ever really fell in love with about Australia, and that There Is a Place. And if you want to know how to write a song about Australia as a place, There Is a Place about New England is one of the most marvellous templates you could ever have to learn to write songs. Now I'm going to read this because I'm going to miss something out, I'm sure, but it's had a series of major albums, worked with the legendary Vanda and Young, and anybody who's worked with Vanda and Young, you know, they're a major figure in their own right. Hosted TV shows, had songs recorded by the like of Rick Nelson and Johnny Farnham, toured the UK, the US, taught school. We've got that in common.
I did, a long time ago.
Yeah. And, you know, developed courses in songwriting to encourage people to develop their skills. Written and produced ads that have seeped into the Australian consciousness and become enshrined in our memories. And never stopped producing albums, delivering concerts that have reached into the very heart of every audience member or anybody who picks up one of those records. So please welcome truly one of the greats. I'm very excited because it's not often you get to talk to your heroes. So please welcome Mike, firstly, a major figure in Australian music.
Thank you, Bernie. I think I'll quit now after that intro.
Now, you come from a very esteemed legal family, yet you decided to create a path as a singer-songwriter when no path existed. What happened there?
Yeah, I did. Some of you may be aware that my brother, immediately below me, is the now retired Justice Peter McClellan, who led the Royal Commission into Child Abuse. I have a younger brother who's just recently retired as the chairman and senior partner of a big legal firm. My father always wanted me to be the lawyer, and he always said to my mother, he'll be the barrister. My father for years kept asking me, are you making any money and when are you going to get a real job? Because he was a banker. He was the managing director of the Reserve Bank in Victoria when he retired. So I come from a fairly conservative middle-class family, and for me to go on the road and be a songwriter mortified my father, I tell you.
So what was the drive? Because there was no real path there.
No, there wasn't, certainly in those days. I'd always loved singing. And I grew up in an era when radio was incredibly diverse. You could tune into one radio station and hear Bing Crosby, Doris Day, followed by Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, the Everly Brothers. In fact, you could find a whole raft of different music in one radio station. And then over the years, as it changed, of course, radio became very narrowcast. It cut its playlists dramatically, and radio presenters no longer had the choice of what it was they played. It was all done by a program director, and more often than not by a program director who programmed the network. So as a consequence, it's become very homogenous, unfortunately.
Now, from that humble beginning of just hearing something and wanting to do something for yourself, that first album comes about. And it's a marvellous album, it really is. But looking back now over those years, what goes into that first album, and what advice would you give that young kid that went into the studio?
I would advise you not to do it the way I did it. Largely because that very first album, which I listen back to very, very rarely, and it sounds to me like a songwriter struggling to figure out how to write good songs, and a producer who was me trying to figure out how to produce an album, because it started just with my guitar and voice. And then everything else was overdubbed. Bass, guitars, piano, strings, vocal parts, etc. And I listen back and I think, if I were to do those songs these days, and I'd probably only do 2 or 3 of them now, I'd leave the rest. I'd probably record them very differently. But it was a learning process, and for that I was extremely grateful.
And as part of that learning process, you got a few support slots as you were going on. So now, we've got people here aspiring to do even half of what you've achieved. Now, that role as a support artist to people like Roger Miller or Melanie, Leo Kotke, Dr. Hook, we've got a fairly broad range there. How important is that support act position?
They were critical in the days when I was first releasing albums because it got you exposed to a much broader audience. It put you in the company of performers who were, in many instances, recognised around the world, who had huge reputations as wonderful performers. And the real challenge for me, and for anybody else who's trying to do that sort of support work up against a big act like that, is to be able to compete at that level. You don't ever want to go out on the stage supporting a major act, feeling insecure about what you're going to do, and concerned that you might not live up to the standards that you set yourself, but also the standards that the audience out there is expecting of you if you're a support for someone like Roger Miller or Leo Kotke, who's an extraordinary guitar player, and I was very lucky to do some concerts with Leo. And they were great learning experiences, but it was that challenge to stay in the moment and stay involved with the audience and take them with you. And it's bloody hard to do when you're a support act because most of the people there just want to see the main act. And I've had a few occasions when people have said, piss off, we're waiting for so-and-so. That gets hard.
Now, your latest album, No Intermission,
yeah.
And it opens with an amazing song, Not Yet, that celebrates ageing and says, I'm not going away, I'm not going anywhere yet. And how does songwriting change across the years as you mature? Because obviously you couldn't have written that 45 years ago, but
no.
But now, that's as raw an expression of what it's like to age in a time when people say, well, who needs you,
I think more than anything else, one of the things that song exemplifies is that when I started out, and when so many other performers of my era started out, there was an assumption that you might burn out by the time you're 35. And you've only got to listen to some of those early Who songs that Pete Townsend wrote, which suggested that the life of a rock and roll performer was very limited. The truth of it has been, of course, that that's not the case. That if you are productive, if you can still hold up and do what you do and do it really well, you can go on doing it for the rest of your life. I've been very fortunate. There was a time when my profile declined and I was able to earn a living for a long time writing advertising and eventually running an ad agency. But that was turning my talent into another area where it could be both productive and could support my family. If you're going to survive in the music industry these days, you have to be prepared to look at what alternatives there might be for your music and for your expertise and what you've developed. And of course, those opportunities have to be sought. They don't just come along, you've got to actually go out and find them. And for me, I'm still doing it. I still love it. In fact, I'm probably these days getting more joy out of performing and writing than I have in the past because there's a lot less pressure now and I don't have to worry about cracking the charts. I'm enjoying playing concerts and I'm getting a lot of good feedback and people who come up to me and say, you taught me in 1972. And I think, not another one.
So, I'm conscious of the time because really we want to hear you, desperately want to hear you play. But I think let's just think for a moment, as aspiring songwriters in this audience, the opportunity to hear words from someone who knows what it takes to write a song, has continued to do that over nearly half a century, I hate to say it, but that's an extraordinary career. We're going to hear a couple of classics, I believe, very shortly. But
Indeed.
please thank Mike McClellan. It's a wonderful opportunity to hear from a genuine giant of the Australian songwriting industry.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Thank you, folks. I was coming back about 5 years ago from doing a concert in Melbourne. Incidentally, I bought my backing track, all 6 strings. And I'm sitting in the departure lounge, Melbourne Airport, waiting to catch a plane coming through from Hobart that was taking me home to Sydney. And at the back of the group of people who were gathered to greet those coming off the plane I was about to get on stood a very beautiful woman, and I looked at her and I thought, oh, I wonder who you're waiting for. And then I did that thing of watching them come out of the plane to my left and going, I wonder if I can pick who it is. And I'd look up and down the first couple and go, oh, maybe not. And then I'd look over here to see if she'd reacted. This is exactly what happened. Sunday night, airport lounge, round about 8:15. Tight black jeans and a white silk shirt, older than she seems. Wide dark eyes and a slender face, all alone she waits. Tall and still, never moves until they open up the race. As the passengers come through the door, I wonder who you're waiting for. It's not the man in the shorts and tan, not the girl with the stud and curls, not the boy with the broken heart, not the aging matriarch. It's not the suit from Baltimore, not the girl in the pinafore, not the vagabond troubadour. I wonder who you're waiting for. I wonder who you're waiting for. Long hair dark as the Gucci bag, hanging by her side. Old gold chain slung around her neck, diamonds in her eyes, and I find myself wondering just how much they're worth. I'm sure she knows love's undertow can sometimes cost the earth. As the passengers come across the floor, I wonder who you're waiting for. It's not the boy in the faded jeans, not the girl with the magazines, not the woman with the weary face staring into space. It's not the man with the penal review, not the girl with the blue tattoo, not the captain of the cabin crew. I wonder who you're waiting for. I wonder who you're waiting for. Slightly he's tall, he might be dark, he'll be a wealthy man. Oh, but I'll never know, 'cause he never shows. She waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and waits. It's not the girl with the long blonde hair, not the man in the steel wheelchair, not the boy coming back from the war. I wonder who you're waiting for. It's not the girl with the champagne eyes, not the stud with the bedroom lies, not the boy from Ecuador. I wonder who you're waiting for. I wonder who you're waiting Thank you. There's a postscript to that song. I was sitting in my GP surgery waiting to go and see him. And as you do, idly picked up a magazine and began to flip through the pages. There she was. But I ain't telling. I grew up in Melbourne, and my grandparents had a house down on Port Phillip Bay at Mount Martha, right on the beach. Some of the most vivid memories of my young days are time spent on the beach with my grandfather and my grandmother. There's a very powerful sense for me that life has come full circle, because these days I live on a beach, southern Queensland, called Castaways Beach. And this song feels like it closes a circle. Every road will turn in time, as every line will bend. Now it seems this restless road started where it ends. For here I stand, my feet in sand, looking out to sea, and across the water, time and tide, a boy looks back at me. He's got sand in his toes and sun on his cheeks. He's a little boy playing on Martha's beach, heading for the water when it gets too hot, sailing away on his little toy yacht. I spent my summers on the bay till I was 9 or 10. Sand and water sang to me, now I hear that song again. It never really washed away the salt that taints my tongue, lingers in the melody of every song I've ever sung. I got sand in my toes and sun on my cheeks. I'm a little boy playing on Martha's beach, heading for the water when it gets too hot, sailing away on his little toy yacht. Most circles take their time to close, and until they do, you never know that it was meant to be. That after all these years, you and I should end up here, looking out to sea. I got sand in my toes and sun on my cheeks. I'm a little boy playing on Martha's beach, heading for the water when it gets too hot, sailing away on his little toy yacht. I got sand in my toes and sun on my cheeks. I'm a little boy playing on Martha's beach, heading for the water when it gets too hot, sailing away on his little toy yacht, sailing away on his little toy yacht. One of my guests here tonight, hopefully he's arrived, he was going to be running late unfortunately, is a wonderful producer who some of you will be quite familiar with. His name is Matt Fell. I've done 2 albums with Matt in the last 3 or 4 years. And when we were about halfway through the first one, I discovered that Matt was born the year Song and Dance Man had been released. Shit, did I feel old. It was released back in 1974. And in that year it was voted by the industry Song of the Year. It's been covered many times since. But in the process of making that album, I said to Matt, why don't we have a go at the old song? But I gave him the license to do with it what he felt was appropriate for the context of the songs that we'd already begun to record. It changed the song, and ironically enough, those lyrics are now probably more relevant to me at this stage of my life than they were when I first wrote them all those years ago. I'm used to living by myself, always on the road, making light of other people's woes. I don't need to take much more than just a song or two, and even a smile can lighten up the load. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I don't care too much for cities, I ain't seen one I'd call home. The only dust they've got there is just plain dirt, and no one takes you in unless they want you off the streets. I get the feeling some folks fear a smile might hurt. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. You know it, sing it with me. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. I gave up looking for answers a long, long time ago. Life's just taking chances. Ask any dancer, 1 foot wrong and it's all undone. I won't ask much of your time, or that you recall my name. Fame is just a momentary curse. But if you recall a song or two that lingers when I'm gone, then I guess a song and dance man could do worse. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. One more, here we go. I'm just a song and dance man, going from town to town, playing one-night shows and country rodeos. I'm just a song and dance man, living on a smile. I'll share your laughter anywhere I go. Thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of the night. I know I certainly will. Thank you.